Stage is set for the ruling All Progressives Congress to hold its national convention. In the course of today's exercise, the APC is expected to elect a new national working committee. 6 aspirants contesting the position of the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress party have agreed to step down for President Muhammadu Buhari's choice. That's Abdullahi Adamu. Meanwhile, at the venue of the APC National Convention, which is the Eagle Square in Abuja, delegates, contenders and party supporters are struggling to find their way into the arena. They pushed down the barricade manned by the police as the crowd outnumbered them. APC has over 7,000 delegates who would come into the arena that has a seating capacity of about 4,000, while 1,815 police officers were deployed and on ground to ensure and maintain security at the venue. Well, we know that ambulances have also been parked at strategic locations across the Eagle Square, as crowd control may be a tough call for the security operatives. All around the venue and the Federal Secretariat, the party supporters are carrying placards and banners with faces and names of their supporters conspicuously displayed. All right, now we're going to be joined by our correspondent, Celestine Area. She will be giving us more updates from the venue of the convention. But first, I have with me in the studio political analyst Balaba. He'll be joining us, of course, to discuss this much-awaited APC National Convention. Of course, good to have you join us in the studio at this time. So much conversations about the National Convention. Oh, that's for the APC National Convention. Will it hold? Will it not hold? Will March 26 actually be the date for this National Convention? And finally, we're seeing this come to pass, you know, especially for most delegates and party stalwarts. But, you know, one of the first things I want to ask you is, which had formed part of the controversies over the past weeks about the consensus agreements, which was brokered by the president in the last 48 hours. Well, I want to get your perspective on that first off. What do you think about that? Do you think, as some persons argue, it saves time and resources?
It speaks to the inconsistency, principle-wise, conviction-wise, and political ideology-wise of the president. Our reason is that he had always given us the impression that he would rather prefer direct primary, because he went through direct primary in 2014 before he emerged as the candidate of the party. He also went through direct primaries in 2018 before he emerged as the candidate of the party. Why is it now that he does not want direct primary to be enacted for the selection of, or for the election of the party chairman?
Some persons would argue, of course, to quell for
it says cost. Did you say that?
Resources, time.
An average party person will tell you it has denied the grassroots the opportunity of having those who need to come and canvass them to engage with them. And in Nigerian political party speak, that is money taken away from people. The party is establishing itself more as a plutocracy, because come to think of it, to even be an aspirant, you would have had to have paid 20 million naira to collect the form.
That is supposed to be refunded, going by what the president had already said.
Oh, the president told you that?
From the report that we've seen.
From the report.
That we've seen, that there could be a refund, of course, for those who have already picked forms.
An average party person, say, in Kaura Namoda or Mushi, or would have loved the atmosphere or the scenario where the aspirants would have had to travel around the country, engage them, solicit their votes. But you know what? You say it's cheap. Okay, maybe it's always better to go for the cheap option.
But if you look at what we've seen so far, when you talk about party politics, and at the build-up of this election, of this national convention for the APC, one would think that this consensus agreement, or this unity list, as some persons call it, would actually help reduce the party wranglings that we're having in the APC? And of course, you know, over the past weeks we've been having people talk about crisis in the APC, crisis in the APC.
With due respect, man, let me politely disagree without necessarily wanting to fault the logic of your reasoning. That APC is designed to always give the impression like it's going to implode. I'm not saying it's going to implode, but it's designed. Look, the legacy parties that formed the APC came from disparate. I don't want to use the word ideology because that would be too gracious to use for the elements that formed the APC, but they came from disparate backgrounds, intellectually, politically. So it is almost inevitable that, look, let me give you a typical example. Al Makura and the so-called anointed aspirant by the president, Adamu, are from the same states. Ironically, the person that President Muhammadu Buhari has reportedly anointed, and I'm choosing my words and my phrases,
yes, because anything can
happen.
Has
reportedly anointed, that person was one of the founding members of the PDP. And in the so-called years of the locust of the PDP, he was a prominent character amongst, in the leadership of the PDP. I'm sitting here now. In the next couple of months, there'll be presidential elections, and the APC will still be pointing fingers at the PDP that they took Nigeria, naturally so, and factually so, that they took Nigeria through 16 years of retrogression, 16 years of lack of progress. Where would that moral compass be looking when the chairman of APC then would be somebody who did practically everything?
I would like to pause you there so that we can bring in our correspondent, Celestine Area. She is joining us from the venue of this national convention for the APC, and she's going to, of course, be giving us updates as to what's going on there right now. Celestina, thanks so much for joining us. Can you bring us up to speed? Tell us what's happening right now. Of course, we've had earlier on, Demola tell us about 6 aspirants stepping down for a consensus candidate. Can you talk to us about that? What are you hearing from the delegates there?
Okay, yes, it's within their right to allow for a consensus candidate, and also, and according to Section 84, subsection 9 of the Electoral Act, they will need to give a consensus form, a written consensus that they are allowed for a consensus candidate, willingly and voluntarily. Right now, I'm here at the Go Square. You can see behind the delegates are coming in. The accreditation was done at the ICC, not at the convention venue. So, one that is something that
I'm really struggling to hear you there, but I heard you talk about some section of the Constitution that talks about the Electoral Acts, that talks about them, first of all, bringing a consensus form to actually, but if you look at the legal implication, Celestina, of having a consensus chairman, do you see this pulling through? And we're going to be seeing some other court cases down the line if this actually pulls through, or if indeed at the end of today, the 6 aspirants are saying they endorse in one person for the national chairman. We seem to be having some technical challenges there.
We're not quite having consensus with technology.
We're not having consensus with that technology, but looking at what we see play out, at today's convention for the All Progressives Congress, some persons would look at how the number of delegates.
We are yet to see much play out. We're still listening to you because as it is now, they've not even started, and it shows the sense of vocation.
We hear that accreditation has started somewhere else. Maybe not at the
yes,
for
security. I wouldn't blame them. In the backdrop of the security situation of the country now, I wouldn't expect accreditation to take place at the venue. But one would have thought that they could have done it, say, yesterday, and this morning people will be coming straight to the venue with security tags security. There are so many ways you can do it now. Technology has enabled, but you know what? It's the APC and it's the typical Nigerian leadership. We get it, okay.
But I understand perfectly what you're saying, but taking a look at what the APC has tried to put up, having delegates, of course, arrive all through the night. Some persons even slept there overnight. We saw some pictures of some delegates around the Eagle Square.
Some have been there for days.
So, and how they've tried at least to position about 1,815 police personnel, security personnel around the Eagle Square to ensure security. But just to pose this with how they've been able to control the crowd there. Because earlier, if you look at the pictures they were seeing on your screen, the picture that we're seeing right now is how the police were trying to control the crowd. That's delegates that were trying to get into the Eagle Square.
You are being quite very polite and very generous in your use of language for them. Those things, at some point, were literally pulled down. Look, at least this, things were practically vandalized. They had to bring in people again to do it. You see, these gentlemen and officers were supposed to be keeping peace, but they've ended up becoming maintenance officers. But that's typical, when you have not articulated the advantage of technology to even determine who would come. You want me to shock you? Some had gotten to Abuja before they knew that they were not going to be eligible anymore, because they came as potential convention participants because they are political appointees of sitting governors and and ministerial level officers.
You're talking about the controversial Section 84.
The party then decided that to stay away from running into some legalistic cul-de-sac, that executive appointees should not participate. And some of them have been in Abuja. But you know what? Like I said earlier, when technology could have been used to determine who would not be eligible, people would not even, those who ultimately pushed down those barricades and the paraphernalia wouldn't even have gotten to look. We saw major global events like so many global events held. Look at the one that was held. You would still have those who would do their protest and whatever, but they'll be far away from the venue.
But if you look at, what do you think the APC should have done? Should they have waited, gone ahead with this national convention, and then come back to have court cases?
How long could they have waited? They were supposed. The CC almost sounded like the Communist Party of
China.
You said so. I didn't bring any name into it.
Let's leave that conversation. But what do you think the APC should have done, of course, going ahead with this convention?
The Convention Something Planning Committee, CCPC or whatever they call it, was initially supposed to spend 6 months. Initially, the first 6 months they said they were doing membership registration. Another 6 months came on, they couldn't do the convention. They were given an extra 6 months, they ultimately could not do the convention. So they are doing it now, better late than never. So how long could they have been given? They are, as at this juncture, they are almost running themselves into a very narrow legal, because of the Extant Electoral Act 2022. It's a very tricky material. Look at even the issue of the consensus. All the other aspirants would have to document their signature consenting to the withdrawal of their aspirancy and allowing the consensus candidate to emerge. As it is now, we don't know if they have that in the kitty. It's just been reported that they have agreed. Some intelligence that I'm having is such that they say Al Makura, naturally, because he is also from from Nasarawa.
Yeah.
And Amakura has been a long-term ideological bedfellow of Muhammadu Buhari. They were in CPC together. Amakura was the first and only governor that CPC had.
We might have to leave this conversation here. Of course, our fingers crossed. We're keeping tabs on what's going on at the Ego Square. Hopefully, of course,
we keep praying for them.
Of course,
we have
better hands to handle this and mop up their house.
What did you say?
They have hands.
They have better hands.
We could
and
argue
they couldn't do it in 19 months.
We could argue that later.
Fantastic.
Of course. Political analyst Balava, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you very much for the privilege
we'll definitely
of
give you more updates on the APC National Convention as events unfold.